Hey everybody, it's me Jaida, and this week I'm coming at you with some tips on how to prevent and address free riding within your student teams from the instructor side of the platform. So, right off the bat, let's figure out how to identify free riding. In Ensightful, we've made this relatively easy for you by breaking down the workload distribution of groups. So, if you see group 10, we'll click into here to get a little bit more information. Michael has 50% of the work, whereas the rest of his group isn't really doing much, with Sophie having as little as 7% of the total workload distribution. So, this immediately should raise some red flags. And in this case, you can even go in and chat with the group and see what's going on, because there's a lot of different reasons behind free riding that might not be immediately obvious. So going into messaging, we can address both the entire group and say, hey guys, what's going on? Or we could even contact individual students, because as I said, there's many different reasons that free riding may occur that we should really be aware of. So for instance, it could be that one student is just being disinterested and lazy and that Sophie doesn't want to take on any of the extra work. Or it could be that there's something going on in Sophie's life that is inhibiting her from contributing to the group. Maybe there's differing learning styles, or maybe she feels pushed aside and maybe other students are more vocal and domineering. Maybe Michael wanted to take on a lot of this work, and Sophie didn't feel like there was a place for her to contribute into the group. So it's really important to try and get to the sort of the bottom of these issues. So you could even, you could even message Sophie and say, hey, what's going on? Or on the other side, you could message Michael saying, why are you doing most of the work? And just really trying to get to the bottom of what's going on in the groups, because it might not be as simple as we first think. Now, moving on to the task page, this is where you can kind of help set your group up for success and prevent free riding before it happens. So the data and the chat is really good at assessing when fires are about to erupt, when groups might need extra help in the moment, but there are ways to hopefully prevent or mitigate the effects of free riding before it even happens. So we found on facultyfocus.com that some of these strategies could be that you make your student groups work in phases, with either having weekly deliverables and check-ins that might not even weigh anything in terms of marks, but are just there for participation, just to make sure that your entire group is sort of staying engaged. So within Ensightful, you can even make tasks that have weekly start and end dates, so that people know that they should be completing things regularly and contributing very often to the team dynamic. Another tip that we found on Faculty Focus is that it sometimes helps to give students creative freedom. So whether this be the way they present their knowledge or the topic that they're presenting on, by giving them that creative freedom, you increase the control and thus the ownership that students have over their group projects, which in turn hopefully makes them a little bit more interested in the end result, as well as engages them throughout the entirety of the project because of their own personal interests. Another thing that we found was that it's helpful to devote class time for students to get to know each other and establish norms and responsibilities before the group project starts. So whether this be in a virtual classroom or an in-person classroom, sometimes it helps to get groups together so that they can establish who will be the one setting up meetings, who will be the one taking notes, and all that organizational stuff, as well as their own strengths and weaknesses, which can help them sort of figure out who would be potentially doing what tasks. So if somebody is really interested in design, while somebody is really good at editing, maybe somebody is way better at public speaking and somebody doesn't really want to do that. These would be helpful things to sort of sort out before groups get together to start working on the overall project. And there are some charts to help that online, which we can link below. Another thing that we found on Carnegie Mellon University is to have individual work within larger projects. So you can see, especially with the tasks in Ensightful, these tasks are designed to break down a larger project and then eventually come together at the end. So tasks in Ensightful are largely a group effort and they still contribute to overall group progress. However, you can modify the way that tasks are created in Ensightful, and maybe they have tasks that are only for one person to complete and only have that one person's grade or participation attached to it. So we found here with midterm reflections, in this group, each person in the team has one midterm reflection that they need to complete for themselves, and it has no standing on the rest of the group's mark or participation grade. So within this midterm reflection, this one's Michael's here, but there's one assigned to each member of the group so that the teacher can hopefully assess their own contributions to groups. So this could be individual deliverables, could be like this midterm reflection where there is a deliverable that is tied to a grade that helps reflect on this one person's participation, but they could also come in the form of maybe combining the project with a knowledge quiz that each individual person has to fill out so that they can show that they really understand the topic, and sort of makes them do that background research that they would have had to do within the group regardless. So yeah, those are just some ideas. They could also be doing weekly journals to just show that they're constantly engaged. And one final tip that we found from facultyfocus.com is that it's helpful to have longer projects with permanent groups. So a lot of people have found that if you have shorter projects and that sort of groups are constantly being switched up, if the students are not already engaged and they don't have the drive to come back each week and sort of put their all in, it's a little bit more difficult for them to be accountable to their team and sort of uphold that team dynamic. So if you have longer projects with permanent groups, that way you're able to increase accountability, you're able to increase team rapport as people are able to sort of learn from each other throughout the course of the entire term rather than just over the course of a week. So yeah, those are some tips for reducing and preventing free riding, hopefully. And we will be linking all of our resources and helpful links in the description below for you guys to check out if you're interested in learning more.